Hello to all my divine beings, and welcome to this episode of Confessions of a New Age Goddess. This week, we have a special guest, Joan Forest Mage from Life Force Arts. So, Joan, if you would like to introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about what you do.
Yes, I do shamanic practice, and we do that through both art and direct healing for people. And I've been doing this for about 35 years and dancing for 50 years. So that has been like my like a huge career for me. And I came to what I call shamanism through doing the arts and then developing it. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, definitely. And then can you just give a very, brief summary on just what shamanism is kind of for a newbie, and just kind of how, I know singing and drumming are very internal part of the practice as well.
Yes, yes. So the word shaman is a Tungus word from Siberia, and it was coined by Mircea Eliade, who was a professor of religion, who was studying the Tungus people.
Mm-hmm.
And he said, and this was like in the 1940s, and he said, when I look at their spiritual practices of talking to spirit guides and working with energy and singing and drumming and to create healing, and I see that this is very similar to many other cultures in the world. And so he started writing about these practices and calling them shamanism, because that was the Tungus word of the people that he was studying. But actually, each different place in the world has a different name for people who do these similar practices. For example, it's Mudang in Korea, or it is curandero or curandero in Central America. It's Sangoma in African tribes. Many, many different places have different names for people who do similar practices. And so it is a very simple way that I have learned to describe it is just to say, I work with energy and spirit guides. Because if you're not working with spirit guides, it's a little bit hard to call it shamanism. Might be something else like Reiki or different kinds of energy, Qigong or energy practices. But like when you're really feeling the energy of different, what we call spirit guides, that is part of shamanism. I also have something I wrote called the 10 Attributes of Shamanism. And so that is a way of the way that I have practices, and the more of these 10 that a certain a practitioner has, the more shamanic it is. So that is one of the ways.
Yeah, definitely.
I do that. I say that I don't come from any kind of, that I don't come from any kind of like indigenous culture or anything. I was raised here in Chicago. Yeah, so.
No,
And
that's
came
very
to this
helpful.
actually through the arts.
Yes. No, and I definitely, I would suggest anyone who is kind of curious onto what shamanism is, definitely read that article on your site. I read it myself, and it really clarified a lot of things, and it broke it down in a really easy manner to understand. Because it's one of those things that people, if they don't know what it is, they could get it wrong interpretation, and it's something that I feel like people should have an understanding of, especially if they are into the spiritual arts themselves. Okay, great.
Yeah. Although there's a lot of different ways that people define shamanism, right? And different cultures like define it in different ways. Like, for example, one thing that shamanism is very much involved in, depending on what culture you're from, is like the psychedelics, right? So I get that more in recent years, I've had a lot of people say, well, do you do plant spirit medicine? I don't, because that's not like I come from the tradition of the arts and how the arts can take you into these really deep connection to spirit and to spirit guides. And so in developing my art, I could not ignore the spiritual aspect of what I was doing. And so that's how I came very honestly about, and when I looked at what I was doing and the practice that I had, it was hard to call it anything except shamanic. And
Right.
so I don't use that term lightly,
Right.
and that is something that many people ask me, well, isn't that cultural appropriation if you're not from an indigenous tribe that has these practices for centuries, to say that that's what you do? And I actually had asked my guides that when I was first really doing this in about 1995. And they said, don't worry about what you're called, just do the work. We're handing it to you on a silver platter. So that's in my, in a humble way, that is what I'm trying to do.
Yeah. And
Help the world.
yes, yes. And I love that because I mean, you are a dancer, you are in the arts. So when you come from it with that intention, that's what's gonna, radiate from you. And I definitely can attest to feeling that from the receiving side of things. So I think that's a beautiful thing. And yeah, if you could kind of just elaborate a little bit about how, shamanism and healing through the arts have worked together for you in life, in a more detailed frame of mind.
So I was I started with like ballet and jazz and, different kinds of things like that. And then really found my home in modern dance. This is, we're talking about like in the 1970s, 80s. And then at a certain point, I really felt like I was meant to create my own form of dance like that. You have to make some kind of decision, like, are you going to be a teacher? Are you going to be a choreographer? Are you going to, just say, well, that was a nice, my doing something entirely different. And so I felt like my mission in life was to create something to help world peace, actually. I mean, one of the things is that I'm a Buddhist. I chant Nam Myoho Renge Kyo. I've been doing that since I was 25, like 1985. And so I said, what can I do in dance for world peace? And everything since then has been part of that determination, right? And so I said, okay, if I'm going to start my own form of dance, I want to start with improvisation and see what develops from that. And I found that as I would do improvisation myself, or as I would teach improvisation, I found 4 different ways that people interacted, which I called sentience, osmosis, dialogue, and crystallizing. And so sentience is moving by yourself and knowing what you think and feel. Osmosis is leading and following, understanding boundaries. Dialogue is interacting creatively, and then crystallizing is moving with a common form and energy and structure. And I found that when I would do performances or lead like workshops in this, people would run screaming from the room and have breakdowns and breakthroughs and have to go to therapists for months after attending my performance or classes. And I knew already at that time enough about the power of the arts to understand, especially dance and vocals, which I always have combined that. Because it's important for people to express themselves, and to understand that and not be always driven by an outside beat and an outside ideas and stuff. What's your ideas inside and how do you express that? I knew enough about the power of the arts to know I was not doing anything wrong. I was doing something right. I was doing something powerful and cathartic. And I said, okay, I have two choices. I can either choose to, like not do this, because it's too powerful and I can't handle it. Or I can choose to really understand what is this power that's coming through me. And so that was the decision I made, was to do that. And I said, I don't even care if it's art, maybe it's healing, maybe it's some kind of teaching. I'm just going to follow it and try to understand what I'm already doing naturally. And so from that, about 10 years, from 1985 to 1995, I studied all kinds of spiritual practices. And by 1995, I said, the best thing you could call what I do is shamanic.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. No, I think that's a really good explanation to kind of show, the journey that took you there, and that, you kind of had to try on a lot of different hats.
Yes.
To your point, because I think a lot of people, when they go through their journeys, they're kind of like, well, I have this one modality in mind and I'm going to learn it and then it's going to be all great. And it's kind of like, well, sometimes you have to pull from a couple different modalities and then turn it into your own creation. And when you really come up with something quite unique that can reach, a wider audience, if you will, in a different way, then I think you've really got it. Then I think you really are, to your point, contributing and really making that difference that, maybe a group of people needed, and it wasn't even created yet. It wasn't even, done through the special flavor that you have, and there are people searching for it. And it's all about really, finding that tribe and making those connections. So I love that.
Right.
And then from all of this, how did really the Life Force Art Ensemble come about?
Right. Well, that was always, it was sort of like there were two things feeding in, right? So there was like the concept of having a dance company or a performing arts company that I started with, right? As I was saying that, to create my own form of dance, which would include working with other people as well. And then also all of these practices that I was, the method was already there. I already was doing this stuff and I was getting all kinds of psychic information and intuitive work and that kind of stuff, and emotional and cathartic and all of this through the dance and the vocals that I was doing, both for myself and my students. And so it was like it grew together, that it took different forms. Like between 1985 and 1995, I produced 14 evening length concerts. I had created a nonprofit tax exempt organization, which was at first called Sentience. And I never called it Sentience Dance Company because I didn't know what it was going to turn into.
Right.
Yeah, but that was the original purpose of that, was to be like a performing arts company, and to express dance as a body movement, as a means of perception and expression. And that's what it still is, in a sense, but many, many layers of understanding how the inner world relates to the outer world.
Yeah.
And so that was some of the connections. So a lot of the, for example, a lot of the spiritual practices that I do that help people understand how to connect to their spirit guides, I do through the arts. And I have I've developed what's called the 9 levels of self. So the first level of self is the integrated self. It's like more of the external, like when you say, hi, my name is Joan, it's the committee of all these people that are within you and everything. So the integrated self, the physical body, the emotional body, the spiritual body, the subpersonalities. Then you get into group energy, like energy of other people, like imprints of other people. Like, do you imitate other people, and you've taken on their mannerisms or their way of thinking? Do you still want that to be part of you? To make a conscious decision. And then also group energy in general, like What things are you picking up from your history, from your family, from your whatever religion or other teaching, or, you know, like say a school or your ethnic group, or many, many different groups that you belong to, either in the present or in the past, or even ancestrally.
Yep.
And then also it's spiritual entities. Sometimes people, honest to goodness, have spiritual entities attached to them. And you got to figure out, you know, how to work with, or spirit guides, you know, their guides to help them. And then the life force, the great cosmic soup and source of everything. So those are like 9 levels of self. And it's very useful to help people heal, to say which level of self, like say if they're having some kind of problem, which level of self is having the problem?
Yes.
You know, because you could be working with, you know, like your physical body. Well, I feel, you know, I feel sick and I feel tired and I feel this and that, or a part of my body hurts, but it's really not a physical thing. It's like an emotional thing or a spiritual thing, or it's maybe even a group thing or an spiritual entity, you know. So that's a way of understanding life. I forgot what your original question was.
Oh no, it was no, that was perfect. It was kind of like, how did the ensemble even come about? I think you talked about the 9 different levels, which I think kind of encompassed a lot, you know, because
Right.
a lot of people, they might look at things as one dimensional. Oh, my back hurts, maybe I overexerted myself. But to your point, yes, it could be emotional. It could be an entity is attached to you. It could be the people living in your house, you know, their energies. And once you can really define what the root of the problem is, or the root of the thing that you want to change, then we can start making that change, and we can start taking the right steps forward. And it's just, I think, about self-understanding, but also understanding yourself in relation to others.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So it's really, it's very leveled, I think. A lot of layers to it. And it's kind of a journey in and of itself, right? Because that self-discovery journey, and you don't know where it's going to take you and the stops you're going to make along the way, but that journey kind of creates who, or defines who you are at the end of the day, or how you managed it and what you learned along the way. So that's really interesting to me.
Yeah, it's also understanding the layers of who you are. You know, you're not, like you said, you're not just this one-dimensional thing, you know, and and those are just a few layers that you can look at, but you know, I found those particular layers to be really helpful.
Mm-hmm. And you might spend a long time in layer number 7, right? You might spend a long time there, and then maybe not so much in layer number 3, because you know that's kind of a part you kind of got down already. So it's, and even just the awareness of how much is really out there that creates your personality. But who am I, you know, without all of these titles? And I think a lot of people know that, you know, I'm not my job, I am not my name and all of that, but it's even deeper than that. Based on what you were saying, why do I act a certain way? Is it because my parents act that way, and then, you know, I kind of took it on as a child and I just never really let it go, but it really isn't true to my authentic self? And there's a lot of self-discovery that could be had with anyone, really.
Oh yeah.
Okay, good. And then, so overall, I would say, you know, what is the mission of your organization, and what are you looking to help others achieve?
A true self and creative community.
I love that. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. So the true self, one of the things we do is work with a medicine wheel, which is, again, it's that sentience, osmosis, dialogue, and crystallizing. Everything I've ever done is based in that, you know, and it's just more and more that I've learned about different systems. And I also, one of the things when I was originally studying it, everything for those 10 years, I kept saying, oh, somebody else must already have this system. You know what I mean? Like I just reinvented the wheel, ha, 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 you know. But you will find that, you know, whatever tradition of shamanism a person works in, there usually is some kind of medicine wheel.
Yes.
which is like a system of explaining the most inner world to the most outer world. Yeah, you know, where you are here, you know, where are you in relation to all kinds of other things that are happening, you know, in the world around you. So, you know, with the medicine wheel, you were talking about, the question originally was,
Oh, just basically kind of the mission and what are you looking to help others achieve in terms of true self and then that creative
and
expression as well. Yeah.
yeah, true self and creative community.
Mhm.
So one important aspect, which is the center of the Life Force Arts method, or the Life Force Arts method, which is the medicine wheel,
Mhm.
is the true self. You know, finding your true self and keeping connected to it. What are your gifts and mission, and what is your personal energy field, which is another way of saying your soul, right?
Mhm.
What does your soul need to do in this lifetime? So it's not about the false self. I talk about the false self being like everything that everybody else told you you should do, that it's not you.
Oh, I know. I'm familiar with that. Yes.
Just
Yes.
get
Yes.
rid of it. You don't need it. You can live from soul.
Yeah.
Right?
Mhm.
That is a startling statement to so many people, especially in the modern world.
Yes.
Not so much in the indigenous cultures, not so much in older cultures and tribal cultures, because they really did honor each individual.
Mhm.
But in more modern times, it's like, how can everybody just be controlled and be little cogs in a wheel, and we don't really care what, you know, what their individuality really is, you know. So yes, there's a lot of stuff that's out there about, you know, find your best self and develop your true soul and all that kind of stuff in the modern world.
Mhm.
But there's a lot less stuff about what is creative community. You know,
Mm.
where do you go to be accepted and honored and integrated into a creative community of other people? And it's not only other people, but it's also nature and the spirit realm.
Mhm.
And that is the beautiful thing about shamanism, is it's never just about you know, people. It's about the land, it's about nature, it's about spirit, it's about the ancestors, you know, and all your different spirit guides and that kind of thing. And so uh, we try to help people not only find their true, definitely find their true self. What are your gifts and your mission in life, you know, but also, where would you go to be able to express this and to have that as a goal, and to, you know, go where you're appreciated. That is, you know, if you can really believe that you deserve to go where you're appreciated, that's half the battle.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Mhm.
Yeah. And I think, yeah, I love how you kind of split that into two parts, because I think sometimes, you know, you might do a lot of work and really get to the root of who you are and your true
Mhm.
nature. And then
Mhm.
it's like, well, I want to create with someone else. I want to create with a group of all different types of talents, and really contribute. And if I don't have that tribe, you know, then my gifts aren't going to be as appreciated, or they might not be reaching the correct audience. I might then internalize that and think, oh, there's something wrong with me. And
Mhm.
when really, if you're expressing your true self, obviously nothing's wrong with you, but the modern world might tell you that there is. And then, you know, it's a battle. Then it's really an internal battle when it doesn't need to be,
Right.
when you're just, you know, with like-minded people who have also are at the same space where you're at in terms of your
Yeah.
self-development. Mhm.
Yeah. One of the things that I found over and over and over, because like, for example, we have the shamanic training program,
Mhm.
right? This is actually our 20th year, April of 2021. It started in April of 2001.
Oh,
Uh,
congrats.
yes, yes. And so it's a very thorough training program of how to work with energy and how to work with your spirit guides. And it has like 4 different levels. The whole program takes a little bit over a year. to do. So I just, just mentioning that it's not just a simple little thing. I mean, it takes you through a whole process, and it's within a community of people. It's taught as classes with other people, so that you're getting not only like learning from one person or a book or something like that, but also how do you interact with other people and see how other people are handling, like working with spirit guides or energy maybe differently than so that I have found is part of the process. And teaching the shamanic training program is one of the ways that we work with, how do you find the inner self and also the outer self.
Yeah. And I love that you said, if someone is struggling in a part of it and they kind of have that support group or someone else who can say, hey, I've been through that, or I am currently going through that, and this is what worked for me. That really goes back again to that sense of community. That's so very important.
And the creative community.
Yes.
Because a lot of times people will start the class going, oh, I'm the only one that has any of these experiences, and I always say psychic work and intuitive work and energy work and working with spirit guides is in the 21st century what sex was in the 19th. Maybe if we don't talk about it, no one will notice.
Yeah, no, it's a good analogy. Yeah.
Like people have these experiences all the time. And no business, no field of human endeavor develops without shop talk. So you develop your processes. If you're always in a group that's not your community, that's not your tribe, and you're always explaining and like what you're experiencing, and they're going, oh, you're crazy. Oh, I don't know what that is. You're talking about having visions or dreams or something like this, or feeling energy. You're weird, then you're butting heads, right?
Yes.
It's like, go where you got a group of people that you say, I'm having this dream of this, flying horse. And they say, oh yeah, that's Pegasus. I see him all the time. What do you say to him?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, then you're on to the next part of where you need to develop what you're doing.
Yes.
So,
yeah, it's like a safe space, but also it's, I don't know how to better define it than the right space. The space that's gonna, it's kind of like you put a plant in front of sunlight as opposed to keeping it in a closet. That's just kind of what comes to mind with me, where you can really have that environment where you can grow.
Absolutely. The soul's home.
Yes.
Like, for example, part of what we do also is we have an art exhibit, visual art exhibit. We have a space in Chicago, right? 1609 West Belmont, right in Lakeview. The exhibit is the exhibit and the performances and what we call the healing arts intensives, which are a way of helping people heal through observing and creating art. It's like a 6-week process. Those are all coordinated with the theme from the Life Force Arts method.
Yes.
So for example, the current exhibit and project, we call them projects, that is happening, which involves the exhibit and performances and the healing arts intensive, is called the Soul's Essence, which is about the true self. Like, what is your soul's essence? And then the next one, which is planned for opening in October, is going to be called the Soul's Home. And so, like, where does the soul's essence go to really feel at home? And that's your creative community.
Yeah. So that marries the two parts together quite well. Yeah. And it encompasses everything that goes along with it.
Yeah.
Great. And then I know you definitely have told us about some of the classes. Were there any other classes that you really wanted to emphasize or that we didn't get to kind of express it a little bit more?
It's, there's so many things within each class,
yes.
right?
Yes.
Like that kind of thing. We have a lot of arts classes that are a part of, for example, the Healing Arts Intensive.
Mhm.
So you can take the whole Healing Arts Intensive, or you could take one class. And then, of course, part of what the ensemble does is create these wonderful performances. And there is a whole like a format that we have of the what we call LaFay, Life Force Arts Ensemble performances, where we start off with a meditation on the exhibit. And this can be done either in person, or now, of course, most people are doing it online. So this is being done by Zoom. And one great thing that has come out of, I mean, it's been a terrible year of 2020 for so many people, but in some ways we were really aligned that in 2019, I said, the next step for us is to do classes online.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Like,
yep.
If you want to know if you're in rhythm and you're being guided by spirit, it's when something like that happens.
Oh my
right?
gosh. Yes.
And little did I know that that was all we were going to be able to do, was
Of
classes
course.
online. And so now we've had people from Thailand, from, Hawaii, from, all over the Australia, like
Wow.
all over the world attend some of the classes, because of that. And so the first part of the performance is the art meditation, where Life Force Arts Ensemble is singing improvisationally and also doing some covers of songs that relate to the theme. And then the second half of the performance is where we're doing more improvisation, also an original text and script that is a poetry or a story of the spirit guides that the performance is dedicated to. And so it really is a shamanic ritual. And we also do, again, improvisational music and dance. And then we finish with a shamanic journey where we're doing the traditional shamanic drum beat. And by the way, the traditional shamanic drum beat is like, I don't have my drum. I could go get it.
Yeah, yeah.
Right over here.
Definitely, please.
And I will play it for you. So traditional shamanic drum beat sounds like this, and I am going to turn on original sound here because sometimes the beat of the drum kind of cuts out if it's a repetitious sound.
Yeah.
And usually if you do that, it won't. So it sounds like this. Right, so it's about 220 beats per minute.
Okay.
And that is a traditional beat that's done really all over the world. If you start listening to different practitioners from whatever culture, they do something like that or some kind of other. Sometimes it's a bowed instrument or it's a rattle. And interestingly, what they have found is that is the theta brainwave rhythm. So you have different brain waves. You have beta, which is a faster beat. That's like your external focus consciousness. Alpha is like slower than that, and it's when you're relaxing and like daydreaming. And then theta is when you're having like, trance, internal world, focusing on having visions or getting information from the spirit guides. And it's this rhythm. So recently it has been proven scientifically that what shamans have been doing for 100,000 years is real.
Yeah, you just proved it. You just proved it, right? And that brings me to even Theta Healing. Why Theta Healing itself is so powerful is because of that very reason. And yeah, we all know about what you said, the alpha and then the delta, kind of when we fall asleep, we get to those different places, and just how powerful sound healing or hertz frequencies or binaural beats really do make a difference.
Yeah. Well, that's this.
Yep.
Yeah, you can, I always loved when Hemi Sync came out. which is like the buyer, I forget how you say it, binaural?
Binaural.
Binaural,
Yeah.
yeah, where you put the two different, they play different rhythms in each
Yes.
ear,
Yes.
and then that synchronizes your brain, and it's like, or you could just use a
All
drum.
right. The good old drum. Yeah.
Just a good old drum, it sort of works in some of the same ways. But I mean, I can also demonstrate for you some of the shamanic singing if you'd like to
Yeah.
hear something like that.
Yeah. Let's do that too.
Okay. Do you have any spirit guide you'd particularly, oh, and speaking of,
Yeah.
some, it's definitely urban shamanism around
Yeah.
here. You get the sounds from the street and sirens and
We get it
things.
all here in
We
Chicago.
get it
Yes.
all. Yeah.
Um, yeah, I mean, my spirit guides, I mean, I really like the animals. I really like, like the cobra, the scorpion's been coming to me, as well as whales. And then,
Mm-hmm.
yes, Archangel Michael, Gabriel, and I love the goddess Lilith.
Ah, okay. So, of those, is there one in particular?
Whales.
Whale?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. So, what I'm going to do here is call in whale, right? And possibly some of the other ones that might wanna to come in here too. So, see. Okay.
Beautiful, beautiful. Thank you for sharing that.
Mhm.
I got to say, when that just sounded so familiar to me,
Hmm.
it was
Like,
kind of, it was kind of like it was embedded or something, it's kind of something like, have I heard this before, but not
mm-hmm.
here, not in this
Yes.
time space
Yeah, right,
reality, if
right.
that makes sense. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So no, that was very beautiful. I'm definitely going to replay that quite a
Oh,
bit,
yes.
quite a
Yeah.
bit.
Yeah, that's improvisational. That is how I work. So I'm opening to the spirits and allowing them to use my voice,
Yes.
and movement and, you know, like that kind of thing. So a lot of trust, enormous trust to be able to do that.
Yeah. And I think it's, also being vulnerable, right? Being
Oh,
vulnerable,
yeah.
being courageous, and understanding the conduit aspect of it too.
Yeah.
Because I think some people, they get a little bit hazy when you're like, oh, the spirit guide said this. It's like, well, I'm the conduit. So
Yeah.
it's easy to kind of let it go through once you are open and trusting, which, yes, trust is everything, really is.
Yeah. Yeah. It's trust, and it's also practice to know that you're protected,
Yes.
by your guides and by source, that you know that you can release and come out of trance if you don't want to be there, or you're encountering something that's, frightening, or that you're kind of feeling like you can't handle. And of course, that's all the practice and training of how do you do that?
Mm-hmm.
What is it, and how do you gain the kind of protection that you don't have to worry about things like that?
Yeah.
Yeah. One thing that many performers, of course, are just like shocked at this. Like if you come from a form of performance where it's very structured and crystallized, like that part of the wheel that says crystallized, like, like they don't know how to just open up and improvise. Like they must have notes, or they must have steps, or they must, and a lot of times that gets into that whole thing about the self
Mm,
only being isolated, and
hmm.
that you're not connected to spirit. So therefore, there's a tremendous burden on just yourself. Like, I have to be perfect, or I'm going to be judged on me for how good of a performer I am, or something
Yes.
like that. And it's like, I'm just opening and allowing spirit to speak through me.
Exactly. That's what it is.
Yeah.
I think us as humans with the human brain, we overcomplicate it
Yeah.
sometimes. And also with that practice, you can feel what is really coming, from the spirit guides and what is just my imagination.
Yeah.
It's because some people are like, oh, are you just making something up? And it's like, well, it feels different. So I know
Yeah.
I am not. I know I can decipher between that
Yes.
feeling from practice and from doing it,
Right.
and getting in that feeling place at a regular amount of time on a daily basis. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, great. And then I think just really my last question, before we kind of sum it up, is who is your ideal student? Who do you kind of see gravitate the most towards your classes, towards your center?
Right. There's several different things. It often is somebody who is already having spiritual experiences and wants to understand what's going on, right?
Yep.
Like, how do I work with this, or what's happening, or what's a framework, for this, or for example, how do I heal? I feel like I need spiritual healing. A lot of times it's also artists who are in that position, that they feel like there's something spiritual about their art, or people even have said, oh, your art is very spiritual, and like they have no context for that. They don't understand what these people are saying. So many of our artists that have produced our wonderful shows and performances and all that are like within that category. And again, a lot of my clientele are people that are having these kind of experiences, and they want to know what to do with them. Or, for example, they might be healers of some kind, like whether that's a therapist, traditional, like, talk therapist, or a nurse, or a massage therapist, or a Reiki master, or, something like this. But the spirit guides are talking to them, and in their context, or the energy work,
Mm-hmm.
the energy is happening, a work is happening through them, and they don't understand what that is.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
And I think it's so important to have a guide, when you're going through that experience, someone who really can help you decipher what's going on.
mhm.
And not only just tell you, hey, you're not crazy, but this is what you can do with it. These kind
Yes.
of are your skills and talents. And man, you could really expand with it if maybe you try this outlet,
Yeah.
or how to really emphasize what they're already good at in a way that it could reach an audience effectively, and in their unique way.
Yes. Absolutely. you know and uh, yes, working with the whole gamut of, like, there's healing and there's teaching, right?
Yes.
And healing is, when you do something educational, especially, there's a whole field called transformative education, and that is a concept in higher education, that where people, like college professors and things, were saying, sometimes in order to learn something, you really have to grow internally.
Mm,
Like, you can't learn the thing without changing your view of life and yourself.
yes.
It's not just an intellectual understanding. It's a practice, you know. And so healing, what I say is healing is about creating a new self. And
Yeah,
there's always a mystery to healing. And healing is a lot about process. And it's about allowing the process to happen. And the healer holds the space for the process to happen, right? Um, Whereas teaching, you've got an outcome. Like,
yes,
here's what you want to learn and be able to do by the end of this teaching process and this learning process. So there's you as a transformative educator, which shamanic work is.
hmm,
Ain't no way you can get shamanic work without, you know, if you don't need transformation and transformative learning, you already know what you need to know in it.
yeah,
If you're coming to the program, it's because you need to do transformative education,
of
right?
course.
Um, that as a transformative educator of that program, I'm going back and forth a lot between healing and teaching. So we've got this overall goal, but sometimes the person really needs to heal.
Yes.
And so we do both, you know, depending on recognizing those roles and what the person needs at a certain point within the process.
Yes. And I think that's so important what you said. Basically, sometimes you even need to change your perspective in order to even understand something.
Mhm.
And then, yeah, sometimes it is a process, but sometimes, you know, when you get started with something and you started on the wrong foot, you got to change your process. There's nothing wrong with that either. And just kind of take a step back or break and evaluate.
Yeah.
So yeah, that really resonated with me on a personal level.
Mhm.
Okay, great. And then was there anything else that you just kind of wanted to share that we didn't get to let our audience know?
Well, just love yourself and respect yourself. And that is, you know, the basis of everything, really. You know,
Mm-hmm.
like, be present and be with spirit and do what your gifts and mission are.
Yeah, it's more simple than we're making it.
Yes,
I know I said that already, but I feel like it needs to be repeated just so that people, you know, aren't so hard on themselves and,
absolutely.
you know, kind of honor themselves so then they can honor another or honor their community.
Exactly.
Okay, great. And then did you kind of want to let our audience know where we can find you, social media, the address again, all of the above?
Yes. So, Life Force Arts Ensemble, our website is lifeforcearts.org. And we also are on Facebook and Instagram and Twitter and, you know, different kinds of social media. Our address is 1609 West Belmont in Chicago, which is near Lincoln, Ashland, and Belmont. And please stop by. We have the beautiful art exhibit that's open to the public. It's free. And we have lots of classes, the shamanic training program, the healing arts intensives, the performances, the arts classes. So please join us.
Yeah,
And wherever you
definitely.
are in the world, if you've got an internet connection, you can join us on Zoom.
Which is so great. I love that. The world's
Yeah,
getting smaller, right?
exactly.
And then I will definitely, you know, link everything in the description box as well so that our audience can find you. And then Joan, again, I want to thank you so much for this.
Oh,
This was such a treat. And I just feel like a lot of people will really just benefit from the information that you shared with us today. I know I did.
thank you. Thank you. Thank you for having me. It's been wonderful talking with you.
Awesome. Awesome. Okay, great. And then everyone, you can find me at thenewagegoddess.com, Instagram, the New Age Goddess _ after each word, Instagram, New Age Goddess. And if you would like to book an appointment with me for Reiki or Akashic Records reading, you can book an appointment with me on my website. I do both in-person and remote sessions. So thank you everyone for joining us today on this week's episode of Confessions of a New Age Goddess. Thank you and namaste.